welcome to another video where I'm going to talk about the Dreadbox Nymphes, which is a remarkable 6-voice analog synthesizer made by Dreadbox in Athens, in Greece. It weighs less than a kilo and fits in your pocket. I think this is such a miracle that many of the reviews I've seen, which have been slightly lukewarm, seem to be ignoring this fact. It's a 6-voice analog synthesizer with all modern specifications that fits into your pocket and will cost you around 450 euros. That is a double miracle. And just as a quick demonstration, I'm wearing a gilet with, I guess, quite big pockets, normal size for outer gear. They're not quite matte pockets, but they're quite big. And here it is. I'm putting the Nymphes comfortably in, and I've got room for, well, quite a lot of things to go with it. Bit of cable maybe, even a small controller. So that is a 6-voice analog synth that fits into your pocket and isn't too heavy to carry around. So I think it's worth stressing that. It's an extraordinary achievement for Dreadbox. And of course, as many people have pointed out, this involves a number of compromises. But I want to make the point that these compromises are rather clever. So the most striking thing perhaps about the synthesizer is the lack of display. I mean, in a modern synthesizer, that's something unusual. I imagine this is largely to keep the costs down, that clearly their ambition was to make a polysynth that was less than 500 euros, which is an extraordinary thing to try and do. What this means is that there's very little in the way of direct visual feedback. Again, something very unusual in a modern synth. So you have these controls here, everything you might expect in a synthesizer. You have a sweepable wave in the oscillator section. Then you have level, sub-oscillator, noise, pitch to LFO. Then you have a filter section. Again, nothing unexpected there. Cut, resonance, and envelope amount. Then you have an envelope here, which in the front panel without shift is the filter envelope. And here you have an LFO with rate and wave. Nothing unexpected there, but you have a shift button here, which then gives you a second layer of parameter changes. You then have a menu here, 1 to 7, which you use the preset dial for. This is a way of finding many things within the synth, the different play modes, the different modulation sources, LFO, velocity, aftertouch, and so on, some MIDI things. There are also global settings you can make within the menu. So that's quite a lot packed into a small space, and it does involve, not complicated, but not immediately to hand shift combinations. It does need to be learned. And don't get me wrong, the first week I had this synth, I did scream at it quite a lot. It does take a bit of learning. It is all in there, it is all under the fingers, but it's not immediately there. With the presets, of course, you can plug in and play, but when you start building your own patches, there are some things you need to practice. I want to draw attention to the fact, however, that one of the things I really like about this synth, and I think is very, very unusual, is that because of the lack of this visual feedback, so if, for instance, if you have a lot of settings on the front panel, and then on the front panel with shift, you have another set of settings, you're not going to be able to see them all. They're not available to you. You can set the faders to jump or to fade in as you like. On the other hand, what this means is you have to use your ear to figure out what a patch is doing. And I think this is heuristically deliberate. I think this is built into the design as a synth. I think it was a creative compromise. And it wouldn't be the first time that in the midst of what seems to be quite a standard synth design, Dreadbox have added something which is fundamentally quite new. You think of, for instance, the flexible architecture of the Nymphes, just to name one. So it's interesting that they've added this very new aspect to working with the synthesizer. You really have to use your ears. So that's what I want to do, just a little demonstration of in the second part of the video. And look also at the aftertouch, which is polyphonic in the 2.0 firmware. So this is the marvelous, miraculous, fits in your pocket, less than a kilo, €450, 6-voice polysynth. And it sounds beautiful. So here is the Dreadbox Nymphes, made in Athens. I recently visited Athens for work, and I didn't have that much time, but I'm such a Dreadbox fan that I had an afternoon and early evening free, so I went to the Acropolis, and then immediately after went to the Dreadbox headquarters, the two most important places in Athens. Okay, so what I want to look at here is how the lack of immediate visual feedback, given the menu system within the Nymphes, forces you to use your ears in quite an interesting way. And it's my argument this is actually heuristically a very interesting compromise, and I have no problem with it. Okay, so I'm just going to load a patch. So if we go to load here and then to the shift, and I go to bank 1, and then I go to number 7. Then we have bank 1, number 7, preset 7. And I'll just play a chord. So we can hear a nice, stabby, rhythmic Juno-style chord. And I noticed that when I play the chord simultaneously, the stabs are very even. But if I roll a chord, something very different happens. We get a kind of pseudo-arpeggiating. So I'm thinking to myself, what's going on there? So the stab sounds like a filter envelope. So the first thing to do is to check the filter envelope. So hold down a chord. And I start to... Nothing really happening. So I start to add a bit of envelope. And I notice that something completely different happens. So I realize, no, that's nothing to do with it. It's not the envelope generator. So I think, okay, well, if when I roll a chord, I get these individual voices triggering the LFO, then it must be LFO1, because LFO1 on the Nymphes is polyphonic, which is to say it fires individually for each separate voice. So if I roll a chord like this, go to the LFO rate, indeed, that is what's going on. So, I mean, obviously, that's a very contrived example because I made this patch so I remember what I did, but you can imagine you saved a patch and a few weeks later you go back to it, or you're investigating one of the factory presets and you're not quite sure what you're hearing. You really have to have a good look around inside the synth, which I think is no bad thing. So I'm controlling the Nymphes from an Arturia Micro Freak, which might seem like just off to the right there, away off the screen.
And you might think that's a quite strange choice, but the reason I did that is that among the many wonders of the Arturia Microfreak is the capacitor keyboard has polyphonic aftertouch. And the Nymphes 2.0 also has polyphonic aftertouch. So I just wanted to give a very brief demonstration of how special this is. So what I'm going to do inside the blue box is to add a little reverb to the signal of the Nymphes. Then I'm going to find a new preset. So I'm going to go to Bank 7, number 6, which is a polyphonic initial patch. So you get something like this. And you can hear that I've added a little bit of reverb. So now I'm going to go to the menu and I'm going to go to number 6, which is the aftertouch menu. And what this does is turn the front panel into a set of levels, a set of destination levels for that modulator, in this case aftertouch. So I'm going to take the low pass filter cut and put it in about the middle so that the aftertouch will now affect the filter. So if I come out of the menu, then I just press a chord, I will just take the filter down, and then when I start to add pressure on the keyboard, it starts to open the filter. Let me just quickly add some sustain here so we get a slightly longer sound. So if I play a chord now, and I add pressure to the top note, you can hear only that is opening the filter. The others remain with closed filter. And then I can start adding little bits of pressure to the other notes, and sure enough, we get this lovely, very expressive polyphonic aftertouch. So that was just a quick demonstration of how to set up aftertouch. So like I say, with the menu, the front panel and the shift panel become settings for the modulators and some other global settings which you will all love finding out about when you read the beautiful manual. So I hope that was interesting. Yeah, like I say, I think it's great. You really need to use your ears to go in and find out what's happening with this synth. And of course it sounds absolutely wonderful. So thank you for listening and watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And I look forward to making a new video soon. Thanks.